Hey everybody, Chef Chad Armstrong here, founder of Home Cook Academy, and welcome to this video lesson on how to make chicken stock. You know, you might ask, why do I need to make chicken stock? I can just buy it in that box or that can at the store, right? Wrong. You know, that stuff is so full of preservatives and sodium that it's crazy. You know, if you ever turn that label around and read what's in the back of that label, the amounts of sodium and whatever else is in there besides just the ingredients that should be in chicken stock, it's crazy. You know, quit buying that stuff. You know, the reason I want to teach you how to make chicken stock is because chicken stock is really one of the simplest things that you can make, and most of the ingredients that I have here are all ingredients that I already had. You know, I've got leftover chicken carcasses and roasted chicken bones from, you know, chickens that I've cut up over the last couple of weeks that I've just kept in my freezer. I've got my veg, which are just mostly leftover veg from, you know, the last couple of weeks as well, that I just bag up and freeze until I have enough to make another batch of chicken stock. So this is really 75 to 80% a leftover chicken stock that I'm not having to go out and buy a lot of stuff for, so I'm saving a lot of money. And I know exactly what I'm putting into it. It's real food, and that's what this is all about. That's why we created Home Cook Academy, so you can go out and make your own food. So I want to go over a few things about the basics of chicken stock. You know, there are some rules. I know it seems odd, you gotta have rules for everything in cooking. All right, so there's some rules for making chicken stock. I know you rules. So I just want to go over a couple of guidelines. We'll call them guidelines instead of rules. You know, it doesn't sound as, you know, stuffy. Some guidelines for making chicken stock. One is for my chicken stock, for what I'm gonna make, and this is gonna yield about a gallon of chicken stock. I'm gonna use a 5 to 1 ratio. So 5 parts chicken to 1 part mirepoix. And mirepoix, if you don't know, is just a mixture of onions, carrots, and celery. And in my chicken stock, I also add leeks to my mirepoix, so the tops of the leeks. So mostly I've got a little bit more of the onion and leek ratio than I do the carrot and celery, because there's more flavor coming out of those. So I add, you know, roughly about 50% more of the onion and leek than I do carrot and celery. So for this one, to yield a gallon of chicken stock, I've got 5 pounds of chicken carcasses and bones that are both have been roasted and that are fresh, that haven't been cooked at all, that I just used to save the carcass off of chicken that I cut up last week. So 5 pounds of chicken carcasses. You can use bones, you could be roasted, and then 1 pound of mirepoix. And to that, I'm also going to add some other things that I'll go over in just a second. But the main thing is just to have a nice even ratio, because I really want the chicken flavor to come through with the background accent of those veg from the mirepoix. So another guideline to go over with chicken stock is you never ever want to boil chicken stock. You know, chicken stock should never boil, because if you boil it, it's going to start to leach out the impurities out of the chicken bones, and you don't want that. You really want to keep a nice clean, clear chicken stock as much as you possibly can. I'm also going to cook my chicken stock for about 3 hours. You know, 3 hours is right around the time when you've extracted almost all of the flavor out of the mirepoix and out of the chicken that you can possibly extract. You just wouldn't be able to get any more flavor out of it. You know, if you want, you know, 4, 5, 6 hours, it would just start to break down too much, and you get those impurities once again. But 3 hours is about the minimum for you to get it out. So don't, you know, try and do a shortcut and do it in an hour and a half and boil it. It'll just have a really cloudy, you know, impurity-filled chicken stock. I do want to get it just to below a boil as fast as possible, though. So when I put it on, I'm going to add cold water to my chicken stock. And the reason I add cold water is if I add hot water, it's going to start to extract those impurities right away. So I want to bring it up fast, but not too fast. So cold water, don't boil it, but bring it to just below a boil as fast as possible. And once I get to just below a boil, I'm going to turn it down so it's at just the lightest simmer that you can imagine. So really, it's just going to be nothing more than a few bubbles coming up from the bottom of the pot. You'll see, 2 or 3 at a time coming up. You don't want it to be moving. You don't want the water to be moving at all. So not a simmer, just below what would be considered a simmer. It's just that simple. So let's go ahead and go over here so you can see on this on the cutting board what I have with my ingredients. So I've got here my chicken carcasses, my 5 pounds. I've got the 1 pound of mirepoix. I'm also going to add some spices and some herbs to this as well that are going to help add flavor, enhance that flavor. I've got fresh thyme, and this is about 8, 9, maybe 10 sprigs of fresh thyme, about the same amount of parsley stems. So I want to use, these are fresh parsley stems. I don't use dried parsley, or don't use the leaves of parsley because they're really bitter and it'll add that nice that quality that you don't want. I've also got some black peppercorns that are whole. There's probably 10, 12 in there. You don't have to be exactly 10. You can just about that many. And I've also got a couple of dried bay leaves. So those are what I'm also going to add to my stock. Make sure that when you add everything into your pot that it all fits nice and loosely. It shouldn't be snug. So you can see here this is a 12-quart stock pot that I'm actually going to put everything into, and then I'm just going to cover that with cold water. So about 6 quarts should fit in there nicely to where at least I'm above my my product, but the chicken and the mirepoix, by about 1 or 2 inches to the top. If you go any more, and you'll start to lose the quality. You won't get as much flavor out of your chicken stock if you do too much more water ratio to what you have in the pot. So if you've got a bigger pot, you can make more chicken stock. That's great. But this is a perfect size for what I use at home, because I can get probably 4 or 5 quarts of stock out of this. How do I store my stock? I buy these at the local chef's store. They have them. Pretty much every town has a chef store now, where you can go in. If you have a business, you can get not to pay taxes on it, but if it's also open to the public. So I buy sleeves of these at a time, and I love these things because this is about the right size for what I want to store in my freezer for my chicken stock. So I'll fill this up when my chicken stock is cool. I'll fill this up to just about 1 inch below the rim, and then I'll put the lid on. I'll label it with some masking tape and a Sharpie, and I'll freeze these. And they last, they can last up to about 3 months in the freezer. But mine, if you're using them and you're cooking more, you'll start to go through more. You won't need to keep it forever. You want to keep it for a year. So great way to store chicken stock. Make sure though that when you are done cooking your chicken stock, that you cool it down as fast as possible. And what I mean by that is, you want to get as much heat out of your chicken stock once it's done. At the end of the 3 hours, you want to get as much heat out of your chicken stock as possible, as quick as possible. And the best way to do that is to go ahead and break it down into your storage containers, because the less mass you have in here, the faster it's going to cool. If you try and cool down all the chicken stock at once, it's going to take a long time to cool down. And what I'll do, I'll just fill up a big pan full of ice water. I'll put my chicken stock in these containers, and I'll submerge these without them going over into my stock. And then every 15 minutes or so, I'll come by and I'll stir it up with a spoon to release more of that heat. And it should cool down in about 30 to 45 minutes that way. And then I can go ahead and label them and freeze them for my use at a later time. You don't want to take the whole thing of chicken stock and just put it into your fridge. One, it's going to take forever to cool down, and two, it's going to heat up your entire fridge quite a bit, and it's going to risk the chance of spoiling some food or making some food turn bad and then getting you sick at a later time. So make sure that you are cautious about cooling it down. Use the proper methods for cooling down your chicken stock, and I do explain all that in the recipe below that's downloaded, that you can download with this video. So there you have it. It's just that easy. You don't have to do much more than that, other than follow some simple rules, and it should take no time at all. I mean, you put it on the back of the stove, you let it get it to just below a boil, and then you just barely simmer it for 3 hours, strain it, cool it, freeze it. Done. It's just that easy. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Feel free to share it. Go ahead and get it out there. Definitely use this. Start making your own stocks. You can take this and make vegetable stock with this if you don't want to make chicken stock. All you have to do is just substitute quite a bit more mirepoix, and then add maybe some a little bit of dried mushrooms or some fresh mushrooms, maybe some parsnips. Have great flavor. Just increase the amount of veg. Keep the spices and herbs the same, and then cover it by 1 inch or 2 with water. But only cook it for about an hour. That's about all it's going to take to get the flavor out of veg stock. So all this and more, you're going to find out later through one of the lessons in Home Cook Academy. It is coming up down the road in one of the weeks. There is a whole lesson on soups and stocks. So I'll be covering this a lot more in detail, and other stocks as well. So I hope you go out there, make your first stock, save your carcasses, save your mirepoix, and make your own stock. And Till next time, get out there and cook because life is worth cooking. Take care.